No. It wasn't. Oh, that's a good idea. No.
You're up.
No. It wasn't even. Thanks for asking. It was no.
We're on.
So there was no wiggle room there whatsoever. I did that. No.
The August 4th, 2025 Auburn City Council Workshop will be called to order. The first item on the agenda tonight is a presentation of the housing study that was commissioned by the Ad Hoc Housing Committee. Mr. Holmes.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone. If the chairman of the committee would like to come up and join me. So I wasn't there for the beginning of the Housing Study Committee, but I got hauled in a few months ago, and after they had met a few times, they made it very clear that they really had a lot more questions than they had answers, and we really needed some help to pull it together. So the two chairs have been very active, and this evening we have Philip and Anna from HRNA, but you can tell a little bit about kind of what the process has been.
Sure, thank you. Do I,
You're all set.
don't need to, I'm spoiled, thank
We're
you.
getting made easy over
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, thank you, yeah. So, Ned Claxton and I were co-chairs. We had a committee which met several times. At the same time we were meeting, the state had come out with a report that had been provided by H&R Advisors, looking at the housing needs of the whole state. And we looked at the section on Lewis and Auburn and felt like we needed more information, and we looked to the city to see if there was a way we could hire HRNA, which we eventually did. I believe we used ARPA funds, and were able to commission this study to drill down deeper into the needs of Auburn. And it's the whole spectrum. You know, it's not just lower income housing, middle range housing, higher end housing. We need housing at all levels to supply the needs for the city, and HRNA Advisors, I think, did a really good job with this report. I think people will be pleased to see it. Philip Cash was the principal, Anna Galicio. I'm not sure if there's anybody else on the call, but
That's who's
yeah.
presenting this evening for us.
Yeah, so I will just pass it back to you and to them.
So we have some technology issues going on, so it's a little bit different. So this microphone is actually what they're hearing things through, and then you'll be able to see them at the top, and they're going to walk us through the slide deck, and then obviously they'll have time for questions. But I think you'll see it's a really in-depth process they went through, and some of the results are really interesting. So I'll turn it over to Phil and Anna.
Oh, there they are.
Thank you, Glenn. My name is Phil Cash. I'm a partner at HRNA. I lead HRNA's housing practice, and I'm going to walk you through the housing study today with Anna Glecchio. Next, I'm sorry we were not there in person. I would very much like to be there. I'll go quick introductions, talk to, consultants always want to take a chance to say who I am and what we're about. We'll talk about Auburn housing needs, then we'll get a little deeper on what's, type of housing being demanded, talk a little bit more about the supply, and then we'll get a little bit into the next steps for the follow-on work and analysis work we are doing. Next slide. So I can't see you, as Glenn said, so I should stop at any point you want to engage in a conversation or interject. Just somebody wave me down or shout at me, and I will pause. So HRNA is a real estate and economic development consulting firm. There's about 200 of us. We're offices in New York, DC, Raleigh, Dallas, LA. All of our work is at the intersection of public and private interest and the built environment. So we do work on parks and open space. We do work on universities and innovation-driven economics, and we do work on housing, which is unfortunately a challenge in every community in our country right now. Next one. So our housing practice, the work we do is kind of organized in 3 areas. We do housing plans and strategies, like the work we're doing with Yard, where we look at housing market for a community, try to understand what's actually happening in that housing market, what's driving the challenges, what the community is already doing with its policies and regulations, and what else it might do. Then we design policies and programs. So selling public land or providing public funding for housing or changing local land use or development regulations, all these tools that we'll talk about a little bit here today. We sometimes design and set up and help local governments run. And then finally, we do underwriting for local governments and philanthropic actors. So when you sell a piece of land or if you're putting investment there, we'll help negotiate with the developers and make sure you're getting the most public good. And we do that in markets across the country. Next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Auburn's housing needs at a high level, and then Anna's going to take us into in much more detail. And again, feel free to, we can't see you, but tell us when you want to interrupt, and happy to have conversations. So starting at a high level, you all know state law, and probably better than I do, but I know LD 2003 reasonably well. And it called for really looking at the community level across the state. What were the housing needs? How many homes actually needed to get built? And we did that work with the state, and as part of that work, we looked at what was needed by region, because it varies pretty significantly across the state. About 24,000 for central western Maine was the region we ended up setting up. And we took that analysis, and we'll talk a little bit more about how, but we got to how many of those homes actually were needed in Auburn between now and 2030, which is frankly getting closer and closer. And we came to just over 1,300 homes. And I'll talk a little bit about how we got to that. Next slide. So when we look at housing production overall, or when we did it for the state, the methodology they came up with, they wanted like historic underproduction. So looking at the past, how many homes are we short based on the number of homes available for households to move in? So think about kind of like vacancy rate and the number of what it would take to have a healthy economy. So based on how many jobs we have. And that, we did that number, and this is at the county level, and that came out to about 3,800 homes. And then we looked at, okay, given the projections for the jobs you're going to have, how your population is aging, and where your economy's at, about what the future needs. And that was about, there's more of a range on that one, 2,200 to 2,700 homes. We put those together, and that gives us a range of how many homes really are needed in the region. About 6,500, maybe as low as 6,000. When we put these numbers out, these are numbers that are intended to inform public policy, and as you're thinking about these things, if you don't build the 6,000 homes, Auburn won't, 6,000 homes didn't get built in the county. The county wouldn't go away, Auburn wouldn't cease to exist, but it is what leads to, it hurts your economy, it hurts your employers, makes homes less affordable for those there, it makes it harder for people to move there. It generally, all the housing stress you're feeling right now, it'll continue to exacerbate. So we talked about this. These are goals, they're numbers, but it's not a binary, like you hit it or you don't hit it. Progress towards helps relieve tension, shortages, increase the tension, increase the pressure on the market overall. Next slide. So to try to understand what was going on, we took the numbers and we started to back them down at the county level. And we looked at the future need low and future need high, and we got to a range there. And, really, to get to these numbers, we're talking about ramping up housing production, based on what's been being built in the county. At the county level, again, we're not talking, at the city level. We're talking about really you need to see a bump of about 20%, so about a fifth more homes than you've been building recently, and then you need that to basically grow, keep ratcheting up every year through the end of the decade. So, not massive increase, but significant increase. And Anna will talk a little bit more about how this compares at the city level. Next slide. So, okay, we got those county numbers and started to think about what that would take to do. Back out. So we looked at Lewiston, we looked at the rest of the county, and we backed up numbers there. And we really did that looking at both homes and jobs across the county and where those are at, and assigned them out. This is a methodology that's, we looked at some methodologies different states across the country used. We looked at what's going on in Maine. We talked some with the state, make sure that we didn't make a recommendation that they were then going to come out and say something radically different than down the road, because that would be awkward. And we got to this number. Again, these are not perfect, exact, absolute numbers. These are goals to move towards. We say this number about 1,300 to 1,400 homes. We're talking about about a 10% increase in your housing stock, which over a 7-year period is significant, but not a radical. We're not talking about radically redeveloping the city. We're talking about a moderate increase in the number of homes. Next slide. So I'll hand things over to Anna, and she'll speak a little more detail on the demand for the homes.
Yeah, thank you. And it's great to meet y'all. And hopefully feel free to stop me as I go. I'm gonna try to move quickly so that we can spend a bit more time on some your questions. But Glenn, if folks want to pause me in between, just feel free to stop me. I think that all of these numbers are important to consider, and I think then the next question is what types of homes and how are we actually going to be able to hit these goals as Phil discussed. And so the next section are really to be able to provide some background in terms of demographic and economic factors that are important when we're thinking about how we're actually serving folks that are living in Auburn, and then looking a bit more at the homes that have been permitted and what growth looks like moving forward, and being able to kind of give you some of those reference points for the next 5 years. So starting first on this housing demand piece, I'm going to quickly talk through some of our 5 key takeaways for you all as we are going through and understanding the Auburn housing market. And we'll have a little bit more detail on each of these different points. So I'm going to provide a very quick overview just to start. On the first 2 points, what we've really seen is that there's a mismatch between the size of households and size of families and what the housing stock in Auburn currently has and has to offer for folks. We've seen an increase in the young adult and senior populations within Auburn, and both of these things combined means that there, larger growing population within Auburn doesn't necessarily always have the exact right of housing that they would want as they're either entering the Auburn housing market or potentially looking to downsize or explore additional housing options than maybe where folks are living currently. We've also found that for folks that are working in Auburn and living in Auburn, the ability to be able to own and rent has become increasingly challenging. We found that around $280,000 is the home price affordable to the median income household, and really not necessarily seeing those deliveries yet. And so homeownership in particular has become increasingly expensive and less attainable. And lastly, really seeing major shortages for lower income households within Auburn. Over 80% of renters earning between $20,000 and $35,000 a year or cost burden or paying more than 30% of their income towards rent. So returning back to that first piece on the mismatch of what housing you have in your housing stock and the populations that are really growing, wanted to show a quick graph of comparison between the population by household size and housing stock. And so, what we've done here is in the dark blue, you'll be able to see population by household size. And so over 70% of folks are in households of 1 or 2 persons. So it's a single person household, or maybe a couple, or parent and child. And that's the majority of people living in Auburn. When we compare this to what your housing stock by bedroom size looks like, only around 20% of your housing stock is a studio or a 1-bedroom home. So what this really does is creates a mismatch for folks looking just for smaller units or smaller building sizes to be able to then live in. We've also seen a net population change by age, primarily for folks that are between the 18 to 24-year-old age, and for seniors and folks older than 65 years old. Again, indicating the interest and need for more diverse housing options. And we talk in these income ranges. I think it's helpful to be able to really put some ideas of what we actually mean by being able to afford rent. And so what we've done here is actually laid out a few example households for reference to understand who can actually afford rent in Auburn. So I'll walk you through one quick example. In blue here we have a single parent who is maybe a home health aide. They have 1 child, and their average earning for a home health aide is around $37,000 a year. When we look at what rent that would be affordable for them, it'd be around $935 a month. This is compared to what median rent is in Auburn, which is around $980. And so already for this person, it is going to be increasingly unaffordable for them, and they're paying more than 30% of their income towards rent. There are also, and on the homeownership side, are not able to afford most homes that are sold in Auburn. Only able to really afford a home at a price of around a little over $100,000, but not really seeing any of those homes being delivered or even existing in the market. And while we're talking about this homeownership piece, we've seen the increasing gap between the median home value and what the median renter, who is median income renter, can afford. It has become increasingly challenging in the past few years as interest rates have risen. But even before interest rates were rising, we had seen that gap growing. So in 2020, it's around $53,000 gap between what the median home price was selling for and what somebody could actually afford. And what that really tells us is that it's becoming increasingly challenging for the average renter who wants to become a homeowner to find any entry-level home ownership opportunities. And lastly, on the rental supply, when we're talking about what types of rental units are needed in Auburn, the places where we're seeing the largest gap are for those who are earning under $35,000 a year. Those folks are primarily who are paying much more of their income in terms of rent. And I think as Philip noted, doesn't necessarily mean they can't live in Auburn. They're just paying a much higher share of their income towards rent, and that means that they can't spend that money on other parts of their budget. And it means that they're living more on the edge. And quickly on housing then, housing supply. Want to talk through a few of the key points here in terms of what Auburn has been producing historically, and then getting into, if we're producing and continuing to produce at the same pace, what that would look like. I'll also note here that the full study has more details than we'll necessarily go into, and particularly in this section. So I would definitely reference and recommend going and taking a look at that full study here. So first, what we've actually seen is that the annual pace of production has decreased between the 2000s and the 2010s. So during those two time periods, we were in the 2000s on average, we had delivered around 800 homes compared to around 400 in the 2010s. Starting in 2020, we have seen an increase in home production closer to where we were at in the 2000s. But again, that have been declining in the number of units that we've been permitting in Auburn in 2024 and 2025. And part of that is where interest rates are sitting, but it's also, overall still not hitting the targets and goals that we necessarily would want to be. So, if we were to continue on the pace of permitting that Auburn is currently at, by 2030, we'd be looking at around 720 homes built. And that's if we are able to keep up the pace that Auburn has set starting in the 2020s. That still leaves us around 580 homes short of the goal that is, has been set out, 1,300 homes. And to kind of put this in perspective and as of where we're at right now, there are 30 homes that were built and occupied in 2024. Around 80 have been permitted in 2024 and 2025 that have not yet been occupied. And 1,200 need to still be permitted and occupied through 2030 in order to be able to hit this goal. And I think it's really important to understand that this is the goal, but there are some parameters that we are able to control in terms of as the City of Auburn in order to help meet this goal, and some we aren't. But I think this is the overall picture that we're currently working towards. And I'm going to pass it back over to Philip to just talk through kind of where this leaves Auburn and where we as HRNA and the City of Auburn team are going.
Sorry, I muted myself before I got. So we're talking about next step. So, City of Auburn has an important role to play, but we also want to acknowledge the larger factors going on whenever we're talking about housing market and hitting housing production goals. The city does not control federal environmental regulations, federal trade policy that changes construction costs for things, interest rate policy, or the overall overall level of regional demand. So there has been very strong regional demand from Maine, and I think that will remain significant. It does start to have some influence on land costs, though, both on how land is permitted and how impact fees are charge, so that the permitting process, the entitlement process changes the availability of land, and that changes the value of land and what the land actually costs to build on. The cost of construction, obviously the city does not control labor supply or overall construction costs, but it does have an influence on the building code and how it implements the building code and how long, some influence on how long construction takes, and all those shape construction costs. And then it has some influence on funding availability. It has the ability to put some money into projects, obviously less funding available for it than the federal government or the state government is still funding. Where it has the most power is local regulation, rules and processes, that, and the cost of design and permitting really coming out of those local regulations. And there's both the regulations as they're written, the regulations as they're interpreted, and then the actual implementation. So you can have very reasonable regulations, and then you can have, this is not a real example, but a hypothetical, you have a fire marshal show up and interpret those regulations in a different way or inconsistently, and that's kind of real impacts on it. So there is influence the city has, but it's mostly at the regulatory level and actually what's allowed to be built and how that building process actually moves forward. Next slide. So part of what we're going to get into, sorry, I'll go back. I won't get into this yet. Sorry. Part of what we're going to get into on next steps on this is actually looking at some best practices of how other places have come at this, and then get a little bit deeper on how the city might come out, its zoning and density, what it can actually do on the funding side that doesn't have serious fiscal impacts for the city overall, and how those options balance with the city's other priorities. We understand while we're doing a housing study, there's also responsibilities for schools, parks, open space, public safety that are also priorities for the city for good reason. So we'll talk about, I'm happy to answer questions about that a little more. And the last thing I'll call out, got ahead of myself a minute ago, is there is an online portal we can actually go see a detailed version of the report and the market analysis that is available. So that'll be shared around, and it's something for everyone in the city, and frankly, folks outside the city of Auburn who can actually take a look at and understand what's going on. And we find it's a useful resource. And as you'll see, the data is in there. As the underlying data is updated, the analysis actually updates. So as there's new census data, there's new market data, you can actually see a little bit how the market is moving. We know it's frustrating to do a report and then have the market change and then have the report be out of date. So I'll stop there, and happy to get into questions and talk more.
Any questions from the council? No, thank you very much. Mr. Holmes?
Yeah, the online portal will be rolling out probably in the next week or so with a new website coming on. We're trying to tie those kind of things together, but we'll share it with everybody, and we'll get it on the current website on the front page, so you'll be able to link to that and check that out very soon. And as you mentioned, there are some other things still going on that they're looking into to give us some more information to feed into the report.
And members of the public will be able to link to this interactive portal from our homepage?
Correct.
Great.
And then I can quickly share screen just to show, if that's helpful, of what that looks like.
That'd be great.
And just so folks can see a little bit further, this is really the data that backs some of our analysis and our findings. And so what you're able to really do is dive into charts, maps, understand, how Auburn's population has changed over time, for instance, and that, this data is possible, and you're able to see all this data for demographic information, employment data, and then getting into information on the existing housing supply in Auburn and housing affordability. So understanding, who is cost burdened, what home prices and rent costs look like currently, and how that has changed over time. And so you're able to get, all of those more just kind of one-off data points directly from the site as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Ann.
Yep.
Great. So I would urge the council to take some time to look through the report and use the interactive tool once it comes online. I think that the report coming here from the Housing Committee is going to be a valuable input to the comp plan process. And I think the council should be thinking about what input they want to have to the comp plan about housing goals over this period of time based on the data that we have here.
I just had a question. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so used to pressing the button. I don't need to press the button. Question about affordability. I know even though we're showing a real gap in affordability of housing in Auburn, relative to other states, isn't that gap not as bad? I think isn't that maybe contributing to the influx, not just here, but in other parts of the state? Certainly the areas like Portland and southern Maine that have very high, gaps between affordability and the actual pricing, but the rest of Maine, much of Maine seems to be attracting an influx of people because of, could you comment on that?
Sure. So first, we should probably, Anna, we could do a comparison into the dashboard. We should think about giving a comparison. So the answer is correct. So there is a housing shortage, or there's an affordability challenge for every county in the entire country. And we've run this analysis for every single county. So I mean, when I say every county, I mean every county in the country does not have enough housing that's affordable for households that are about 50% of area median income. Obviously, each area having a different income. Yours tracks with that. So you have an affordability challenge, and that significantly impacts those households, and it has increased some. However, it is significantly better than most growing markets. So that is like the fact that both the lower end of there, yours is not as extreme, but I would also say, and this doesn't show up in that housing affordability, is for the more moderate level. So we talk about home prices and how the home prices have gone up. Your home prices are still, well, they're high relative to the incomes in your market, and they're getting higher. They are low for the quality of the housing stock you can get and the quality of the amenities you can get relative to other parts of Maine, and definitely relative to the rest of the country. So if you can get a job that's not necessarily based just in Auburn, or just, maybe it's from Portland or maybe it's national, it's a very good deal on housing and quality of life. So with that in mind, there's more return to office, so there'll be less remote, but I still expect you all to continue to face significant market pressure in the coming years. It's just a good deal. It's a nice place to live for not too much.
Thank you. Any final thoughts or comments from the council? Council Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it's a great report, but it also makes my heart sink because of the unattainable housing that a lot of our Auburn residents can't afford. A lot of the seniors, they're getting priced out of their apartments and some homes. The kids that have gone to high school here and want to raise their family, but they haven't got that huge paying job, they can't afford to locate around their parents, and the kids can't see their grandparents. I'm just afraid within 10 years, all we'll have is more implants, people from other municipalities, outer state, living in Auburn, and we won't have the historic memory and the people there that I've grown up with and a lot of others have. That's what breaks my heart.
Other comments, questions from the council? Not seeing any. Thank you very much. I appreciate the folks from HR&A presenting tonight, and Rick, extend our thanks to the ad hoc committee, and especially to you and Ned Claxton for leading that effort. Thank you very much. So the next item on the workshop agenda is vacant property. Is vacant property ordinance. I think that's going to be Mr. Cousins and Mr. Bowden. Is that correct? So the council will recall, we discussed this, it must have been a couple meetings back now in workshop. There was a number of thoughts and concerns expressed by the council that were captured, and I think that those have been incorporated into this draft, and after that incorporation, the draft has gone for legal review, and so Mr. Cousins and Mr. Bowden can give us update on the changes, and then we'll see if there's any further questions that the council has.
Well, thank you for allowing me to be here again. So some of these changes that have occurred were based off of some of the comments that we had heard previously, primarily a lot of single-family homes. So we wanted to take into account some of the folks that prefer warmer climates in the wintertime. So essentially, as long as they're here 20 weeks a year, they're actually excluded from the vacant buildings ordinance. Free to register if they want, but they're primarily excluded from it. Another one too, which was brought up, a concern that was brought up, was well-maintained homes. We've taken that into consideration as well, and it doesn't exclude them from the registration itself, but it does exclude them from the fees. I think this is a good idea, especially for first responders who are trying to prepare. If there happens to be a call out there, at least they're going to know they can prepare ahead of time if they know this is going to be a vacant building, because a lot of the calls aren't the same, you know. Let's see what else here. Some of the concerns that the city attorney had, they were minor. It was actually a pretty positive review. We needed to articulate a little bit of some text in here, which really wasn't significant. He had concerns about the fee structure, which was addressed. It appeared, in his opinion, to be more of civil penalty, so to speak. So it was written to articulate that, you know, what are these fees going to be used for? Inspections, first responder, emergency services, and such.
I think in the newer version of the ordinance that you have before you, I think it does recognize that vacant and abandoned buildings take a lot more staff time. They quite often are the biggest blight in a neighborhood. We do spend a lot more time on them. We spent a fair amount on a couple of them today. But it also tries to make sure that people that are taking care of their buildings, especially the single-family homes, don't have that burden under the ordinance.
I went back and checked my notes from the last meeting. A few things I think that came up that are incorporated here under the exclusion. So we had already had the active duty armed forces as excluded. Seasonal dwellings, you know, like if it's, say it's a camp on Taylor Pond, seasonal dwellings are excluded. As Mr. Bowden mentioned, one families, the snowbird exemption, for lack of a better term. Buildings that are actively under construction, buildings that are actively marketed for sale. There was a change in the fee structure so that those buildings that have been owner-occupied are only half the fee of non-previously owner-occupied residential dwellings. And there was an exemption, as Mr. Bowden mentioned, exemption for buildings that are vacant, but which have some type of a property maintenance agreement, and they're currently maintaining the property. And then the last thing I noted from my notes from the last time we talked about this is there was a change in the language so that there is no fee if it's a vacant building, but they've pulled a building permit for renovations, demolition, or repairs to bring the building up to code. Other questions or comments, thoughts by the council on the draft? Council Whiting.
I just had a comment. I read this story about a person who had moved into Presque Isle Housing Authority and had vacated a rural development, or formerly known as Farmer's Home, single-family home that they couldn't afford, and they abandoned. And it took 10 years for the federal government to get around to trying to do something with that property. And I'm just wondering if that's happening here. If it is, it's not a good thing. And I know some of these other mortgage companies aren't particularly responsive, but I was just horrified to see something like that.
It is surprising how long it takes when we know a bank is in a position that they can foreclose, that they're ready to foreclose. One of the ones we were working on today in New Auburn has been at least 4 years, where the owner has not been responsible. He's been there occasionally. The bank can take control of the property. They filed some paperwork with FEMA during COVID that delayed the foreclosure by another couple of years. There's a lot of things that can make it drag out. 10 years seems like a really long time, but we definitely see 2 to 5 years where there's really nobody in control of the property that's acting quickly and responsibly, taking responsibility. I think this will really help make sure we have contact information and also encourage them not to just leave it vacant in this limbo between ownership of financial institutions and a responsible owner.
Any other thoughts or comments, questions from the council? Yeah, Council Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just appreciate the changes that you guys did incorporate, and one that third bullet I thought was, I just wanted to call out that we did talk a lot, and thank you for incorporating that the increases in the permits were based for consecutive permits, so implying, as I interpret it, that if someone is working with you, kind of resets the clock, and so I think that was a good a piece from what our discussion, so I appreciate you incorporating that.
I think one of the other big ones too is once they're pulling the permits to do the repairs that need to be made to make the building no longer meet the abandoned definition, that they're bringing it back into service, then they can also be exempt from it.
Anything else from the council? No? Thank you very much. We appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
So the next item is an update on the PAL building from the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Rita, can you just slide that, or, yeah. We've had some inquiries regarding, if you recall, when we began the project at the PAL Center, the playground that's on the side of the building needed to be removed because of the expansion of the center itself. We certainly have had some inquiries regarding the replacement of the playground. Previous councils put money in place for updated playground equipment. That was done at the Lake Auburn Grove. It was also done at the two playgrounds at Auburn Rec were part of the upgrades, and the PAL Center is the additional one. As soon as Dennis gets there, we'll show you what this will look like. What we were able to do, because of just some challenges with space and the need to meet our requirements with the land. Eric, what's the name of? Land and Water Conservation there was an agreement that was done with them years and years ago for that space, so we had to work with them to get agreement for moving the playground, where that would be located, and so 7 Chestnut was the right location for it. If you go by there today, Rita told me that the arborist and the team has already gone out and cut the trees down. What we wanted to make sure was that if a mom is at the playground and she has littles that are playing here, this will all be fenced in. And she has other kids that are down in the basketball courts. You can now look right down into the courts. That is all cut back. It's opened up. For a lot of safety reasons, that's really needed to be done. So we're in good shape there. Dennis, go ahead and go to the parking lot design. That would be great. Some of the equipment here will also be available for any individual that might need aids to be able to use the equipment. This will be accessible that way as well. There's some sensory type of equipment that's going to be located here. And then as soon as we get to the Keep going down.
No picture of this.
So the parking lot itself, where the building was, if you're looking at 7 Chestnut Street and you're looking to the far left where it goes down to the basketball courts, that's where you'll see the playground equipment. And then to the right is where we'll have anyways between 30 and 40 spaces. We believe that'll be adequate for what we'll start seeing on weekends especially is youth basketball will be there during the season. So that'll be a great space for those games. That'll be a good enough amount of parking for parents to be able to go and access into the center. So we're excited about this. Like I said, the work is underway. This won't stop the opening of the center. This will be going on throughout the fall, and all the equipment's ordered. So you'll really see that transformation. And I know that was the goal of the council when it was to purchase 7 Chestnut Street, work on that initiative. That was a building that certainly we needed to address, and then we'll be working to cap that lot. As you know, there's some challenges with that lot. That lot will be capped, and then this will take place. So, questions? We're excited
Questions or
about this
comments
next
from the
phase.
council? Yeah, Council Whiting.
Just a comment, I think that parking sounds good. It almost reminds me of the parking lot over on the corner of Drummond and Pleasant. Sort of a little pocket parking area, not too
Yep.
big, but serving the needs without,
Yeah.
having this mass of pavement.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's right across from the playground that's there. The other piece that will come back at some point to have a conversation with the council on, when we were first working on these designs, we weren't sure if some of this would be located. If you recall, the city took possession of, I think it's 16 Walnut. Does that sound right, Eric? 16 Walnut? So we have that space still, and that'll be a lot that we'll need to discuss and say, okay, what's the good use for that lot? What does the council have in mind? Staff will work on some recommendations, but there'll be some other decisions that will need to be made. Right now, that lot has been used for the contractors. They've used that lot for all their workers that have been coming in. They've been using that space. But we'll need to make a decision on that. And I think the other update is some soccer use will be happening in the field there. We do have a work order in. If you go, they'll be taking out those old bleachers that have been there, the old wooden bleachers. Those will be going out. The new ones will be coming in that we've had over at Pettingill Park that have been set aside that haven't been used. Those will be going in that space. I think that's the last component on that. And then we will need to assess Chestnut Street field and determine whether or not what upgrades to that field need to take place. Right now, it's a practice field at best. And so we will need to do some work on that, especially if we're going to be using it more. I think right now lacrosse is probably, it's being used for practice for lacrosse, and then it's being used for some youth soccer. And so yeah, a lot of great things happening there, but we'll be getting information out regarding the ribbon cutting and the opening of the center soon. We should be getting some more updates in the next couple weeks regarding the furniture. That's the last piece that we really need to get in and get in place. Thanks.
Any final thoughts or questions from the council? No, thank you very much. Given the time, we'll move on to the executive session. That's item 9 on the agenda. So this is executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA Section 405 6A for the city manager's evaluation. Is there a motion?
Motion to move.
By Councilor Walker and seconded by Councilor Melks. All those in favor? The council will be in executive session.
7 boats, 3 cars in the back of it. I'm like, and then I was down Riverside Drive, and I found in the back a bunch of trash in the woods. You find a lot. You see a lot of stuff.
The August 4th, 2025 Auburn City Council meeting is called to order. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If we could have the councilors introduce themselves, starting with Councilor Geary.
Good evening. I'm Belinda Gary. I'm a city councilor at large.
Good evening, Rick Whiting, Ward 1 City Councilor.
Good evening, Tim Cowan, Ward 2 City Councilor.
Good evening, Steve Milks, Ward 3 City Council.
Good evening. Jeff Harmon, Mayor.
Good evening, Ben Weisner, City Councilor, Ward 4.
Good evening, City Councilor Leroy Walker, Ward 5.
Good evening, Adam Platt, City Council at large.
Brendan Edwards, Student Representative.
Phil Kroll, City Manager.
Great, thank you very much. There's no consent agenda this evening. The first item of business is approval of the July 21st, 2025 regular City Council meeting minutes. Are there any errors or corrections? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Walker, seconded by Councilor Weisner. Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 7 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the motion's adopted. The next item under communications, presentations, and recognition is notice to the City Council reference a denial of a business license application. Mr. Manager, is that you or the clerk?
No, I think this is just your notification. You have it in here. Future action will be brought before you in the future, but I don't think there's anything else to really discuss. You have the information and it'll come back before you. We have to notify you when we receive when we make the denial.
Great, thank you. The next item is a proclamation for National Night Out. I'll read the proclamation. Whereas the Auburn Police Department is participating in a unique nationwide crime, drug, and violence prevention block party entitled National Night Out, and whereas National Night Out provides a unique opportunity for the City of Auburn to join with thousands of other communities across the country in promoting strong police community partnerships, and whereas the City Council, our residents, and our community partners play a vital role in assisting the Auburn Police Department's crime prevention efforts, and whereas it is imperative that all citizens be aware of how they can help reduce crime, drug abuse, and violence in Auburn, and whereas trust, cooperation, and connection are essential to a safe, caring, and united community. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Jeffrey D. Harmon, do hereby call upon all citizens of Auburn to stand with the Auburn Police Department and support their 21st annual National Night Out at Festival Plaza on Main Street on Tuesday, August 5th, 2025. Further, let it be resolved that I, Mayor Jeffrey D. Harmon, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, August 5th, 2025 as National Night Out in the great city of Auburn. And I would invite everybody. It's tomorrow night, Festival Plaza. It's always a great time. Lots of families come out, so come on down and join in with us. We'll move on to the first open session of the evening. If there's any members of the public that would like to address the council on items that are not on tonight's agenda, please approach the podium and provide your name and address.
Honorable Mayor Harmon, esteemed council, Charles Soule, 42 Bradley Street, Lewiston, Maine. I'm just here to, let me justify my being here. I was a class president in 1973 at Little. DAR, Good Citizenship Award, went to Boy States. And then I went into the military. I had a full scholarship to Norwich University and a couple other schools in the area. But back then it was a rite of passage because my father had fought in World War II in Korea, and as I said, back then it was a rite of passage. I just wanted to alert you to I've been running a newspaper for 20 years. It's called the Lewiston/Auburn, Maine Newspaper Rebuttal. And just today, I have 58 nations that are reading it, but I'm having difficulty selling it to Lewiston and Auburn. So I hope you don't mind me kind of advertising on your time. I do appreciate it. But like I said, I've got 110,000 people on Facebook, LinkedIn.com, 18,000 people reading it. And I'm hoping that my hometown will read it. Once again, the best way probably to get to it would be Googling my name, Charles Soule, Lewiston, Maine. And I wanted to thank you for allowing me to address you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other member of the public who'd like to address the council? Please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, the first open session is closed. We'll move on to new business. The first item is Order 6708042025, waiving the temporary food license fee of $60 for the Age-Friendly Community Committee Lobster Feed fundraiser event occurring on August 9th, 2025. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilor Walker, seconded by Councilor Geary.
Correction, it was Counselor Platts.
Oh, sorry. Seconded by Councilor Platt. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item? Please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not see any. Public comment is closed. Discussion by the council. Council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 7 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative. The motion is adopted. The next item is Order 6808042025, amending the city's master fee schedule, Appendix A. For benefit of the public, this is a follow-up to prior meetings regarding the enactment of the fee schedule to align with the prior budget actions by the council. In review, the Parks and Rec fees have started and they're in alignment with the budget. In this item tonight are the parking fee changes, which would be in alignment with the budget, the planning and permitting changes that have a slight modification put forth by Councilor Walker and Councilor Wisner, which would decrease the proposed fee on new single-family and two-family residential construction from the earlier proposed 30 cents per square foot to 15 cents per square foot, and it adds a increase in marijuana licensing fees of 10%. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Whiting, seconded by Councilor Cowan. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment on this item? Please approach the podium and provide your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Quentin Chapman, 51 Eastman Lane. I have a lot of issues with the fee changes. For starters, Maine state taxes, as we've all seen, have gone up. Property taxes gone up. Mine went up 30%, expecting another increase. I own a single family home. I do my own work. I heard comment about it's a small fee, and when you add that to the building cost, it's minimal. It's not. For a guy like me who buys his own 2x4s and puts them together, it's another fee. It's another tax. I don't like the idea of penalizing one individual style of small business either, the marijuana, paying an extra fee. I'm not a marijuana user, not a big fan of it, but it is business in Maine. I would think that you could get more creative. Maybe new home construction, you could lose that fee within that cost, but not. And then there was also comments about low income and moderate income homes. So I bought my house as a specialist in the U.S. Army. I had 4 kids. You don't get more poor than that. Well, you do, but that's pretty broke. I bought my home. I fixed my home. Some of you guys remember what it used to look like. It was a dump, and I bought it as a dump, and I fixed it. If we're going to introduce more low, which I'm got my own opinions on, more low and moderate income, 66,000 or less, they won't be able to afford the additional fee. I would imagine that group of people will be doing the work themselves as well. What is it, $100 for a carpenter an hour? $20,000 to build a deck? That's labor, that's not material. I don't know who's got that kind of cash cake thrown around. So I would ask you get more creative, find another way, or not increase them at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public who'd like to address the council on this item? Please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, public comment will be closed. Discussion by the council. Council Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, I'm not opposed to raising fees modestly. As long as, like with the rec department, the fees are still at the rate that families and those that don't have a whole lot of money that use the rec for their only outlet and enjoyment. In regards to the parking fees, are they still at the same limit as what they were proposed at the last meeting, or have they been modified and lowered? And then, I'm just asking all my questions at once.
Okay.
And then with your planning and permitting fees, I know that there were some adjustments. So where are some of the adjustments for those that are at home that have been trying to pay attention to what we're doing?
So I'll go to the parking fees. I don't recall that we had a detailed discussion on this, but the parking fee proposal is in alignment with the discussion at the fee committee, which is a $10 general increase to go from $45 to $55, with only a $5 increase for residents that live in the defined residential area. There's a map in your packet that shows that, but if you think about it, the downtown area extends along Main Street down around New Auburn. So residential would go up $5.
From 45
to 50.
To 50.
Per
Okay,
month.
that's cool. I mean, it's not, but it's affordable, because I've been contacted with people from like the rope block because they were afraid that it was going to go too high up and they weren't going to be able to afford it. And the way they have to park out back with all the different floodings and different things, they park here so that their car is safe. And so that's good that we're not going to raise their fees to a point that they'll have to figure out what they're going to do for medicine or food or anything else. In regards, like with the planning fees, are we modestly going up, or are we still going to slam out huge fees?
So the current proposal to go, the base fee is still $25. The increase is 15 cents per square foot. So as an example, on an average size home in Auburn of 1,500 square feet, that's $225. Just to put that in context, at the current average construction cost of $285 a square foot, that increase is 0.0005. So it's 0.05%. So you'll see the staff put a chart in the packet. While it's going up, it'll still be considerably lower than comparable cities that they looked at. Other thoughts or questions, Councilor Milks?
Yes, do we have could we put it up on the ordinance up on, the order up on with the red lines? Does it have the red lines? So, and just for point of 25 to 225 is about 10 times, not .00005.
Well, that's the increased cost.
Yeah. That's
against
10
the
times
va-
as
va-
much as it was
is-
today.
It's the value of the
Yeah.
house.
Did
Do
you
we
want?
have I guess that's gonna be the next,
The fee schedule.
and do we have all the red lines?
Yep.
Everything
Yeah.
that's changed, so that's, but there's other ones, right? There's, all of these are changes, are they not?
No, it's just this.
No.
No,
The accessory structure and new construction additions are the changes.
they're,
I think I
There,
can answer.
previously, there were a number of other changes on here, right? And that failed? These are only the changes to the changes, but these aren't all the changes. We're only redlining one little thing on there. We're voting on all of the changes, because that failed.
Right, so just to be clear.
So this is not an accurate document, because it doesn't have all the red lines on it.
This is what we're adopting is we have to adopt the whole fee schedule. So there's things on here that aren't changing. We're readopting all of Appendix A. The proposal and the change from the last discussion was this, and the building permit fees was on the new construction from 30 cents to 15 cents per square foot.
What other changes on this are changes from what they exist today?
Eric, just go to the last council meeting. All the councilors should have had this in their packets. Go to the last council meeting, pull up the scheduled fee, it'll have the other red lines. The recommendation that you have tonight is the proposal by Council Wisner and Council Walker as far as the adjustments based on what was in the previous packet. So those are the only changes of the amendment, what ultimately would have been the amendment, but is from the previous council meeting. But we can easily pull up the previous schedule from the last meeting and show the additional red lines of that fee schedule, so you can see the other changes. So like Councilor Milk is saying, there's other, I think you have to scroll down to the, yeah.
I don't think the red lines were on last council meeting either, and the original one failed.
If you
So
go-
we should be having everything on here should be redlined, because they're all changes.
Eric, it's unfortunately,
Further down.
Emily's not with us, but there's another document that she has prior to this new schedule. And if it's not here, then you've got to go
I'll have to go.
another previous meeting,
Yeah, one more back.
one more back.
While Eric's looking for that, it's not a small amount. It's 10 times what the existing is. And as Eric has talked about in our meeting, in public comment, that the amount of permits are way up for small things. And we're punishing people that are fixing up their house, that are doing things on their own, and we're raising fees on that. And so, okay, so there's a lot of red lines, and there's a lot of changes that are going on, and there's a lot of increases. And so, I can't support, I can't support and I appreciate what Councilor Walker and Councilor Wisner presented, but, there's just, we're getting what we want from reducing the permit fees. We're getting people fixing up their houses, we're getting people doing additional units, we're getting people fixing their decks, we're getting people fixing their porches. And we want that to continue. And, maybe for some people, $225 isn't that much, but I know $225 would be something I'd have to think about whether I'm gonna go and get a permit for building something, so.
So just to clarify, the $225 increase that I referenced is on brand-new construction for a brand-new 1,500 square foot house. It's not somebody that's fixing their deck or putting in new windows or things like that. there's no indication that there's a direct relationship between what the fees are and the amount of permits that have come out. And the other thing that I would say is, the real question here for the council is, when people are doing this work, should they pay the fee for the inspections that occur, or are we going to burden the property taxpayer with these? Because it's one or the other. If we don't raise the fees, would increase the property tax levy to pay for it. Other questions or comments? Council Whiting.
Thank you. I made the motion in support of this because I appreciate Councilor Weissner and Councilor Walker's efforts to come up with a reasonable compromise. Government can't operate without expense increases, just like every member of the public suffers from inflation. So if people, the general public, are suffering from inflation, how is it that we can expect the government to be exempt from inflation? We suffer from inflation too. We cut, I think it was $1 million, maybe $2 million from the budget. Last meeting, we were talking about dipping into fund balance. As I pointed out, our prior finance director would have been turning beet red at the thought of us dipping into fund balance. So I give all the credit to these councilors for coming up with this compromise, which keeps the rates at a reasonable level, but allows the city to recoup its costs so we can do these jobs that the public needs for us to do without an undue burden.
Other questions or comments from the council? Council Platt.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this whole topic has just become, I think, riddled and conflated with lots of different issues. I think we're mixing a lot of data to kind of build some of our conclusions here, but fundamentally I keep coming back to the question of, I understand that these building permits, no one can assume that it is a lot of money or isn't a lot of money. Everybody's different, everybody's got different situations. But fundamentally I ask myself, if people are paying less than the cost to do these things, is it fair for their neighbors to pay for them to do it? And that's where I keep getting hung up. If we had the highest permit rates in the state and we were looking to reduce them to fall in line, I think I'd probably support that. Generally, I'm going to support fee structures that try to promote business. I applaud the previous council, previous mayor for trying this. I think you have to do creative things like this in government. I'm happy to have the discussion with anybody here. I don't see any data that's proving that it worked. From 2021 to 2022, we were down 60 permits. The next year, down another 118 permits. I don't think that's the fault of previous council, previous mayor, none of that. If you look at other communities, they had the same drops. This is based on the Fed. This isn't based on fees. So anyway, that's just my opinion. That said, I agree with Rick. I live in a world of compromise. I appreciate the effort that the two councilors to my right put in to put this together. There is one piece that I'm just, from a mathematics perspective, I'm not quite understanding. I think as I've done the math, call it the reduction in fees that you guys have proposed relative to the original proposal. My math shows us that puts us in a hole, a budgetary hole of about $8,000. I could be off, maybe it's 10. My curiosity is that at raising cannabis taxes 10%, we generate another $22,000. So there's like a delta there of $14,000 or so. I'm just trying to understand that. I should disclose to members of the public, I am involved in cannabis. So I'm not going to sit here and debate whether an increase in taxes is appropriate or not. I think it would be inappropriate for me to have that conversation. But mathematically, I'm just trying to understand, we created an $8,000 hole, we're generating $22,000 in excess revenue. I'd love to talk a little bit more about that, just to understand where that was coming from.
Yeah, and just to be clear, when the councilors came up with this proposal, the numbers hadn't been crunched at that point. So their concept was to make this decrease in the proposed fees for the residential new construction, And to offset that, your numbers are correct, $8,000 on the planning side, and then it would generate $22,000. Given the tight schedule we have, those numbers weren't available till after the proposal was made, but the council may want to discuss that and take some action to rectify that. Council Milton.
Yeah, I just have a question on proper process and procedure. That right now, none of the things that have been presented have passed. It's still the old fees, correct?
Correct.
So we now have we have changes that we've supposedly presented but failed. And now we're putting forward in today's meeting something with assumptive changes that don't show what the changes are for something that's failed, and we're making amendments to something that's failed. And so, to me, I'd like to know what the proper procedure is for this. We're looking at something from 3 meetings ago.
So just to be clear, there was an item previously on the agenda that failed. This is a different order. It's proposing a different Appendix A. The Appendix A that's being proposed is accurately reflected in the package. So there's no direct connection. This isn't in any way a direct amendment to a prior order. This is a proposal that Councilor Wisner and Councilor Walker worked on, and it's a separate order and will be voted on separately by the council. Other questions, Councilor Collins?
Just to follow up on that, so essentially, to Councilor Milk's point, what is marked up here is to highlight what Councilors Wisner and Walker proposed as changes with what we would be voting on overall.
Yeah, I believe the intention is to show what the fee schedule will look like with this change that they're proposing from what has been discussed and what came from the fee committee. So it's a separate order. The council will vote on this, and I think if there's any questions about the difference, we can.
These aren't changed. These are proposed changes to Amendment A, and it's not just those red line ones. Everything on there is a proposed change because it's failed.
So Appendix A currently exists. The matter that's before the council is the adoption of a new Appendix A in total, right? You'll replace the Appendix A with the language that is in the packet with this red line, as Councilor Cowan pointed out, to illustrate the proposal that Councilor Walker and Councilor Wisner had come up with. Councilor Whiting.
Thank you. Could I inquire of the finance director or the city manager about the marijuana fees and what the impact would be of a reduction to 5%? Would it just be a straight line from 22 to 11?
That's it, yeah.
Yep.
I think when Councilor Walker, and they can certainly cover this, they were looking at when did the fees go into effect and factored in a almost like a CPIU of 2% of an increase because those fees had not changed since they were adopted. And so it would have been around 16%. We backed that, proposed to back that down to 10. And as Councilor Platt said, if you bring it to 5, I don't remember if somebody said that, maybe you did, Rick. If you bring it to 5, then yeah, absolutely. You're at 11,000. You still have a $3,000 coverage then.
So I guess in light of Representative Chapman's comments and Councilor Platz's comments, I would move to amend this order to include a 5% increase in the marijuana licensing fees as opposed to the 10%.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Seconded by Councilor Walker. Discussion of the amendment by the council. Council ready for the question?
Actually, I'd like to make a comment. I appreciate the work we're doing right here, right now on the bench. I would just say, moving forward, I understand what's going on here. I understand why we're using cannabis as a scapegoat to deal with this issue, because I understand the pickle that we're in. Moving forward, I think we need to be really careful about how we single out certain industries, be it construction, be it cannabis, be it alcohol, be it whatever. I think we're treading into some slippery territory here, and so I just think collectively it's important that we understand that singling out one industry is not good practice, whether that's a barbecue business or a cannabis company. I think it's just something we need to internalize here. But I appreciate what everyone is discussing there.
Council Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up on that, just for the public, I just want to come back to the efforts that were made by the ad hoc committee and my understanding, interpretation, and what I appreciated was that you were looking at fees and trying to understand, do those fees cover the costs for whatever that purpose was? New construction, for example, or in the case of the marijuana, my recollection is that you didn't recommend a change because at that point, the costs were covered. And so I think that's just an important thing for the council to think about in our future conversations is that that's, to me, is the philosophy, right? And that kind of gets to what Councilor Platts is saying is, I think the effort and what I support is that we're trying to come up with options where the fees are covering the cost of the staff time to the best of our abilities. And I also just want to thank Councilor Wisner and Walker for working on this compromise. I think it was a good effort, and I appreciate the time that you took to try to come up with an option. And finally, I just for the purposes of folks who are trying to follow along in terms of what the total number of recommendations from the full appendix, is it possible that someone could just read what all the changes were, or that, from what we currently have to what we're doing now? Is that okay?
The answer is yes, and Mr. Cousins can tell us the date of the document that Mr. Cousins has up on the screen. What meeting date was that?
So this is the August 4th, tonight's date, and this is all of the changes to the cannabis-related license fees.
Right, and that's the cannabis side. And then to Councilor Cowan's point, the earlier document was what, 2 meetings back? That had all of the changes relative to planning and permitting.
Correct.
What was
that
the date?
failed?
That did fail. So this is the 7/7/25 packet.
So to Councilor Cowan's point, if a member of the public looks at the agenda for 7/7, you'll see the initial proposal that came forward from the
Point
fee
of order.
committee.
Point of order. I just would request is this proper procedure to take an item from 2 meetings ago, present it to this meeting as this is what we're going to vote on, and then take something from this meeting and say this also is going to be on that document? Or is this something that should be presented as in a whole? Because this is all new. Those existing fees that are on Appendix A are not existing. They are new, and they should be presented as new. They can't be presented as if they're, so point of order on that.
I don't think that all of them are new.
Point of order.
So ultimately, the language of the order controls. That's what the council will be voting on. So if, as Councilor Milks has requested, if the council wishes to review the full fees, we can scroll down through that. But at the moment, the item on the table is the amendment. We can circle back to this particular question after we deal with the amendment that's on the table. Is there any further questions or comments? Councilor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm hoping that for future budgetary practices, and when we're trying to change fees and different things, that maybe we could get everything said and done before they get put in the budget, so that we're not in this predicament or potential predicament of deciding after the fact, after it was thought that, or planned on that we were going to support something, and then we didn't, so we pulled the rug out of the budget. And then we had to scramble to try to figure a way to fix that hole in the budget. And all the different things that opened up the can of worms, for anything from having to do a supplemental budget to taking money from the fund balance.
So I hear the counselor's suggestion. I've heard that from other counselors. Just to be clear, the method that was used by booking the revenue in the budget was not an unusual method. It's been used by the council numerous times in the past. I think the largest example was when the council adopted the marijuana licensing. They booked the revenue in the budget, they booked the expenses in the budget, they created a new position in the budget, and they never adopted the fee schedule till almost 6 months later. So the counselor has a good point, and in the future, the manager and I will look at a different way to do this. But the matter before us now is the amendment. Is there further questions or comments on the amendment? Is the Councilor Geary?
Just a point of other information. Now, this amendment that was brought by the good Councilor Walker and Wisner, was that what's in the packet now, or are we amending what's in front of us?
So let's address that. That goes to the main motion. Let's address the current item that's on the table. The current item is to amend the main motion to modify the marijuana fee from a 10% increase to a 5% increase. Let's deal with that, and then we'll take up these issues when we get back to the main motion. Are there any other questions or comments about the amendment? Council ready for the question? The vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Those opposed? 6 having voted in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, the motion is adopted. We'll now return to discussion of the main motion as amended. Are there further questions or comments? Councilor Geary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what we have in the packet is what the good councilors came up with. So technically, is that true? And then if it is true, then technically what's before us is something new. And that should be able to be brought up and not enter into that discussion. How many times can you beat the dead horse to bringing back the same thing every meeting?
So the agenda item reference to this order 6808042025 is a new order, the language of which is what's proposed, and it does include the incorporation of the parking fees. It includes the incorporation of the planning and permitting fees as earlier recommended by the fee committee and the staff, with the adjustment that Councilor Walker and Councilor Wisner have proposed, and it includes, at this point, an increase of 5% in the marijuana licensing fees.
So now my point of order is it's a new order proposing changes. Is it required that it should be redlined because they are changes to the existing or their existing fee structure? Do they need to be redlined in this packet, point of order?
The answer to that is no. There's no requirement that they be redlined at all, ever. It's done for ease of consumption by the council and the public. The order stands on its own, the language of the order. And again, if there's questions about these planning and permitting fee changes from the current Appendix A, Mr. Cousins had it up on the screen earlier, we can scroll down through that, and if councilors have any particular questions and thoughts on any of those items, we are happy to entertain that discussion.
So we're going to refer back to a failed order from a previous meeting.
It makes no difference whatsoever whether it failed or in the past. This is the recommendation that came forward from the staff after the proposal is made by the fee committee. And again, the order that's in front of you, the language stands on its own. That's what you would be enacting. Are there other questions or comments by the council? Is the council ready for the question on the main motion? Council Wagner.
Thank you. Just a comment. My biggest thing of like last time white voting down, I mean, everybody said, and I agree with Councilor Gary, the whole process was the issue for me. I think from what I've heard multiple times from about this is that everybody's looking at this, that this needs to be looked at before and voted on before every single budgetary, so they know what they're getting into and what the fees are going to be. Because if there needs to be changes, that's when they should be made. They shouldn't be made in the process of what we're doing. And on this, so that will be up to the next council when that comes up to it, and then they could go through and adjust these fees accordingly. I'm always open to have discussions and other input from other councilors on changing fees and where they can find the income is. I mean, when it comes to marijuana, when it came into the discussions, I don't think marijuana is a scapegoat. Just looking at it, we're told is it's covering fees, but with the increase of inflation and everything that's come up and everybody's salaries that's come up, but marijuana increase has not come up in, at least from what I was told, for 6 years. So were we overcharging 6 years ago? Is that the issue? And then that's a whole other discussion that we got to look into and dive deeper. That we were overcharging back then, and so and it comes up. So do we need to look at this even more and now table this and have a workshop so we can dive into this even deeper?
So, to the question, I don't know what previous councils had done with the fee schedule over the last 6 years. I can only speak to when the fee committee looked at the fees. They were identifying areas in the fee schedule where the current fees did not cover the cost of providing the services. That was not the case in marijuana. What happened over the last 6 years, I think, is immaterial at this point. If the council wants to examine marijuana fees further in another action, we can do that, but I think the appropriate question isn't what happened over the last 6 years. It's what is the current situation relative to the fees that are collected relative to the services to provide the licensing, oversight, and inspections for the marijuana industry.
Yeah, just a final comment. And just going back, that just leads me to believe how important it is to take a look at this and come up with this before it goes into the budget and really deep dive into these fees so that we address this properly, because there's a lot of concerns I always raise. Thank you.
Again, I would reiterate the comment I made when Councilor Geary brought this up. I heard your issue. The city manager and I have talked about this and potentially can do this another way. The way this has been done is the usual manner that it's been done in the past. And I would remind the councilors that we had a fee committee. Everyone was invited to participate. Councilor Platts was the only one that did. And if there's interest in this in the future, if we re-examine the fees, any member of the council certainly welcome to participate in that exercise. Mr. Manager?
Yeah, if I can just give a real brief discussion regarding our marijuana licensing. When we set this, I've been on the marijuana committees as we were working through the ordinance, setting our fees. Our fees are below most other communities our size. We handle over 220 licenses within the city of Auburn, various impacts, whether it's cultivation, retail, medical, marijuana, whatever the need is. We have, any given time, we have 5 to 6 inspectors that have to go out and do these inspections. So each one of these licenses that come forward, if you were to back in our costs, even with the 5% increase, What you're saying is that for each license, it's about 4 hours for an officer. I can guarantee you that the scheduling, the on-site, and the work that's done, we're not collecting all of our costs currently, if you were to take a look at this. So we're close, right? I think that's the discussion I had with Councilor Weisner and Councilor Walker, is that we're close. I think that we're not penalizing this licenses for this industry. This is one of the licenses, and it's not requirements that the City of Auburn put in place. These are requirements that the state has put in place, that we have to go out and do these inspections. We opted in as a community. Now, part of our opting in meant that the state was going to send some of this money back to the cities, right? We were supposed to see these fees come back to the city, and that was going to help offset our costs. That hasn't happened. So these fees haven't changed. This small 5% increase will help get us, close. But we have one full-time person, plus we have an electrical inspection, a code inspection, fire inspection, a police inspection, and a health inspection based on the state statute that has to go out and coordinate these. What we do here is what most communities do not do, is that we coordinate so that we go out as a team. It's the entire team is going out, they're making the inspections, we work on scheduling that. That's a lot of administrative work to do all this scheduling. But we do it in a way that does not put undue burden on the business owner, that they have to try to coordinate with the electrician to come in for an inspection, coordinate with code enforcement or fire. We're coming in all at once. We walk through, we have, I think, one of the best relationships with these business owners, with the city, to ensure that these inspections are done promptly, that we're not needing to go back. When we have to go back multiple times, most of the times it's because it's a new business and they're unfamiliar with all the state requirements, and we have to walk through that. But the ones that we have now, we're moving forward on. But that's a big lift when we look at over 200 licenses and 200 requirements. Now, some of those licenses, they have multiple licenses at one location. We're able to chip through those. But each one of those have different requirements that they have to inspect while they're on site. So there's just a little brief history on where we're at on these.
Other questions or comments from the council? Councilor Collins.
Just thank you, Manager Kroll, for that explanation. That was very helpful. And just one final comment. I'm not opposed to reviewing fees or other things that are going to be influencing revenues before we adopt a budget, but we did talk about all this stuff. And so I do think it's important to remind the public in a third meeting, these things were discussed, they were reviewed, they were presented. And, can we change that timing? Sure. But the reality is we now have a budget deficit. And I applaud Councilor Weisner and Walker for coming forth with a compromise in order to address that issue, that when we did not pass these fee structures, after it had already been discussed as part of our budget, we have to make some kind of solution to solve the deficit issue. So thank you guys for doing that.
Other questions or comments from the council? Is council ready for the question? This will be on the motion as amended. The vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 6 having voted in the affirmative and 1 in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is Ordinance 0408-042025, amending Chapter 14, Business Licenses and Permits, Section 14-658E, to remove application and license fees. For clarification for the council and the public, this action is to move the location of the license fees for marijuana from being embedded in the ordinance to be on Appendix A with all other fees. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved by Councilor Gary, seconded by Councilor Platts. If there's any member of the public that would like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, public comment will be closed. Discussion by the council.
Mr. Mayor, could you just confirm that this vote has no bearing on the value of a fee, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Other questions or comments from the council? The council ready for the question? The vote will be by roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Platts?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
Yes.
Counselor Whiting?
Yes.
Counselor Cowan?
Yes.
Counselor Milks?
Yes.
Counselor Weisner?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
7 have been voted in the affirmative and none in the negative. The motion is adopted at first reading. The next item does not appear on the agenda for the public and people attending here in the meeting. This is the follow-up to the item on the agenda, item 9, executive session with a possible action to follow. This is the action to follow. This would be Order 6908042025. Order that the Auburn City Council hereby accepts and approves the city manager evaluation report as submitted and reviewed by the council in executive session. And be it further ordered that the city manager shall receive a wage increase of 4% effective July 1, 2025 as a result of satisfactory performance in accordance with the terms outlined in the employment agreement and evaluation findings. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
It's moved by Councilor Walker, seconded by Councilor Platts. Discussion by the council. Councilor Gary.
So this is his yearly contract, is that correct?
This doesn't change his, this does not change the city manager's contract in any way. The contract has a provision that the city council, based on the annual performance review of the city manager, will adopt any adjustments to annual compensation.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the council? Council? No. Is the council ready for the question? The vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 6 having voted in the affirmative and 1 in the negative, the motion is adopted. We will move on to reports. So a couple quick items. The mayor's report relative to the Comprehensive Plan Committee. The committee staff and the consultant have completed a number of public input sessions. For those that were unable to attend those sessions, it's still not too late to provide input. If you go to the city's website at auburnmaine.gov and you click on it prominently is displayed a picture of the comp plan. If you click on that and go visit the project website, you'll see there were community open house events. You can pick any of the 4 and online provide additional feedback in the process. And the next full comprehensive plan meeting will be August 26th here in the council chambers. And the last thing is just to congratulate the Auburn Water District. They are hosting the Maine Water Utilities Association annual meeting, which is the annual meeting of all the water utilities in the state here in Auburn this week. It's being held at Lost Valley, so it should be a great meeting at a great location. We're happy to be able to host them here. Councilor Geary.
Other than what was brought up tonight with the National Night Out, you've got to go. This is one of the best events that the city puts on. It's so family oriented. There's so much for people to do, whether you have kids or not. The music is good. The food they give out is great. And there's a lot of little things for the kids to do and occupy their time. And it's, I can't say enough good things about it. And I think since its conception, I think I only missed 2 due to health reasons. So please, if you have nothing else to do, please come on down. From what I understand, it should be a good day tomorrow.
Councilor Whiting.
Nothing to report other than to second Councilor Gary's comments.
Councilor Cowan.
Nothing to report other than the third Councilor Gary's comments.
Councilor Milk.
I don't have anything.
Councilor Weisner.
Yeah, sorry. We got coming up, National Night Out. Again, I'll add to that. But even more to me is the LA Balloon Festival, we won't have a meeting until then. So hope everybody can come out. Auburn's got some great entertainment on the Auburn side. Hope to see you there and see you at the Balloon Fest.
Thanks. Council Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, again, the Balloon Festival there, when it's here, the 15th there, come over and join us. Sage Friendly has a booth, buy water, soda, and a hot dog this year. So come on over and join us.
Council Platt.
Nothing to report other than school committee has a meeting this Wednesday at 6 p.m.
Representative Edwards.
I just wanted to say that I know that we have, for the comprehensive plan, we have a youth forum on the 8th. So if anyone in the audience has like grandchildren or children, feel free to come out and give your comments. And then the Balloon Festival, we always have Edward Little booths there. So please feel free to show up.
Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to build on the Balloon Festival weekend, so the events in Auburn will be Saturday from noon to 5, right here at Festival Plaza. That's where we've brought in what we traditionally has as the Blues and Brews. So now it'll be Blues, Brews, and Cruise. So hopefully we'll have a great turnout for that. And staff has done a really great job of ensuring that we're on track with this. Emerson Toyota is the lead sponsor for this, so we really appreciate our businesses that support these types of activities. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll move on to the second open session of the evening. If there's any members of the public that would like to address the council on items that are not on tonight's agenda, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Sorry, right?
Am I allowed to speak during this? Like if I have a question for the council?
Sure. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Do I say my address still?
No.
Oh, okay. So I was just wondering, because like we were talking about cannabis a lot, and I know that we have a very like big saturation of the businesses kind of in the city, and with that it's kind of like reaching students' hands. So I just want to say, like, as we like look at it, maybe like the fee increase would be greatly, just so we can kind of deter that and kind of keep it out of students' hands as it's more getting in.
Great, thank you. Is there any member of the public that would like to address the council? Please approach the podium. Seeing none, the open session is closed. There's no other business to come before the council. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Council Walker. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Cowan. All those in favor? The council will be adjourned.